How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. I recently did a video on the top 5 cheapest V12s that you can buy, and the key comment that I got was that V10s are better than V12s, and whether or not you agree with that, I thought it'd be worth doing a video on the top 5 cheapest V10s that you can buy secondhand. To reduce bias on my point, I've listed them from least to most powerful. Definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But speaking of comments, topic of the week this week, what is your favourite V10 car in the world? Mine is the Porsche Carrera GT, but I want to know what yours is, so let me know in the comments down below and have a quick chat about it. As always, remember that I make these videos from the UK market perspective, so prices in other countries may differ, and remember that whenever you buy a second-hand car, particularly high-performance ones, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, all that kind of stuff, super important. This video I focus specifically on the cheapest, but obviously if you're looking for better quality and that kind of stuff, you might want to spend more money. Anyway, as always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, but without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting us off at number 5 with the Volkswagen Touareg, and specifically the first generation model with the 5-litre twin-turbo diesel injected V10 engine that puts out 308 brake horsepower, 750 Nm of torque, and does 0 to 60 in 7.6 seconds. Not bad at all for a car that weighs over 2.5 tons. Maybe not the type of car you might associate with the V10 engine, but it comes from an era of VW where Ferdinand Piëch was obsessively trying to create the most insane cars he could, like the Veyron, the W12 Phaeton, and the 261 mpg XL1, hence this was VW's idea of an ultimate 4x4. This actually had a negative impact on sales, the car ended up being much more expensive than its counterparts. It's also slightly different from the average V10 given the fact that you'll be filling it up with diesel rather than petrol. You might have thought this would help fuel economy, but this doesn't really seem to be the case, as it will only average around 23 miles per gallon on a slow and steady drive. It is of course all-wheel drive and has all the benefits of a 4x4 like centre locking differential, low range mode, and adaptive air suspension which can change the ride height on demand. All this and that ridiculous amount of torque helped the Touareg pull a Boeing 747 jumbo jet on an episode of Fifth Gear. Not a bad claim. £10,000 will get you a 2007 model with around 75,000 miles on the clock, though if you're happy to go for a high mileage example, you can get one for as little as £5,000, making the Touareg the cheapest car on this list. In terms of reliability, owners do mention numerous issues that often have a hefty impact on the wallet, such as the battery under the driver's seat draining and making the owner buy 2 new batteries, and turbos failing, which is a drivetrain out job. However, these problems don't seem to be common problems, but rather just problems faced by individuals. In general, the engine appears to be reliable, and instead the key issues you should watch out for are problems with the Touareg itself. One issue that faces many VWs, the Touareg included, is the fact that when things do go wrong, they can be difficult to work on as components are very tightly packed to allow extra cabin room for inhabitants, so be wary of this. All in all, maybe not a car you might expect to see on this list, but it's by far the cheapest and has a surprisingly large fan base. If you aren't a fan but wanted to build a super torquey project car, it might not be a bad idea to buy one and take the 750 Nm engine out of it. Next up we have the Audi S6 C6, which hosts a 5.2 litre V10 that is heavily related to the engine in the Lamborghini Gallardo, putting out 428 brake horsepower, 540 Nm of torque, and going from 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds. The S6 is available in both Avant and Saloon variants, and the former was slightly more expensive when they were brand new back in 2006. Audi marketed the S6 as a luxury car with sports car performance, which makes sense given its position just above the A6 and just below the RS6. While many mention the engine as being the same as the 5-litre V10 found in the Gallardo, in reality they only really share the same drivetrain for the 4 camshafts. Due to the slightly larger bore, allowing the car to be less aggressive than the Gallardo, the S6 actually has a different cylinder block, crankshaft, pistons and new camshafts, as well as bespoke induction and exhaust systems and a new sump. So is the engine a Gallardo engine? Well, yes, but actually no. I've actually spoken about this car in previous videos, so I won't bang on about it for too long, especially knowing what the next car on this list is. But for £10,000 you're still looking at around 100k miles on the clock for an estate, but you can get these with really high mileage for around £9,000. The saloons are marginally cheaper, with £10,000 getting you under 90,000 miles if you're lucky, and going for as little as £7,000. The V10 engine has been known for some issues however, including carbon buildup which requires a full carbon clean, and timing chain tensioners wearing over time, which is a complete engine out job and therefore quite expensive. As these cars are increasingly difficult to get with the extended warranty, particularly in the price range of this video, it's important to know that the parts for the car are quite expensive, so when things do go wrong, expect to be out of pocket quite substantially. That said, if you like the idea of driving an estate or saloon with an engine related to a Lamborghini, this is certainly a great option with some solid features that I'm sure will keep you pleased for many miles that you put onto it, assuming you can afford the 22 miles per gallon. On to the top 3 now, and in third we have another Audi, the S8 D3, which also hosts a 5.2 litre V10 found in the Gallardo, but with slightly more power than the S6, 443 brake horsepower, and thus going from 0 to 60 in around 4.9 seconds. The only real reason why Audi decided to make the S8 more powerful than the S6 is the fact that it is supposed to be a more expensive, more prestigious option, and obviously more power means better. Outside of that, the formula is similar to the S6 mentioned previously. Sporty features like sports seats, firm suspension, Brembo ceramic brakes, and larger alloys make it look a bit like a slightly larger saloon S6. Aesthetically, I actually think it looks a bit understated, almost like a sleeper unless you really know what it is. In terms of performance, it's not actually too dissimilar from the A8 W12, which produces more torque but is actually based on a longer chassis and lacks the sporty features of the S8. It's more of a wafter than a sleeper. With the S8 you should definitely look for a good spec, as those ceramic brakes were a 5k option from factory, as was the Bang & Olufsen speaker set, both of which are particularly desirable. If you're willing to go for a high mileage model, £9,000 will get you one, and £10,000 will still get you in around the 100,000 mile mark, which is still quite a lot. Considering the engine is practically the same as the S6, you can expect a generally similar level of reliability. Common problems include parking brake motors, suspension compressors and power steering pumps and hoses failing, carbon buildup on the inlet valves, loose or broken flaps in the inlet manifold, worn suspension arms, and various sensors failing due to the incredible amount of tech used in this car. Overall, if you want a V10 sleeper, this will certainly do the trick. 4 doors, plenty of boot space, generally unassuming, and will still manage 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds while making that notorious V10 scream. What's not to love? The top 2 cars on this list actually share the same specs and engine, so to split them apart I've simply added my personal bias into the situation. Feel free to disagree with me on this, but it's just what I think. In second we have the BMW M6 E63, which hosts an uneven firing 5 litre V10 that puts out 500 brake horsepower, 520 Nm of torque, and does 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Just to clear this up, the code E63 refers to the hardtop and E64 refers to the soft top convertible, but either way you're unlikely to find a convertible for under £10,000 unless you're very lucky, as there are almost half as many convertibles sold as coupes. Though top speed is limited to 155 miles per hour, if the car was bought with the optional M drivers package from factory, it was delimited to 205 miles per hour. Absolutely insane for a car that you can get for less than a new Suzuki Swift. The M6 shares a power button with the M5, which toggles a choice of P400 or P500 engine power modes, which basically dictates whether the car runs at 395 brake horsepower or 500 brake horsepower, depending on how you want to drive. Either way, I'm pretty sure you don't need 395 brake horsepower for sedate driving, or maybe I'm wrong, who knows. The M6 features some pretty insane materials for the money too, like a carbon fibre reinforced roof, and other light materials are used in places like the bumpers. These are not just for weight purposes. The reason why the extremities of the car are particularly light is to improve handling by reducing the moment of inertia and lowering the height of the centre of mass. As with seemingly all cars on this list, 10k will get you on with around 100,000 miles on the clock, while a slightly higher mileage model will cost around 9 grand. I'm just going to put this out there straight away. The V10 in this M6 is one of the most loved V10s out there, no doubt about it. However, it is certainly not known for its reliability. There are numerous reports of it failing, with even small problems causing major dents in the bank account. For example, one owner mentioned his valve spring broke while the car was idling, and while one valve spring only costs $80, there are 40 of them and you have to replace all at once. This requires the engine to be dropped out the bottom of the car, so all in he ended up spending around $10,000 including labour on the fix for something as small as a valve spring. Similarly, the SMG3 transmission is renowned for having issues. Look up red cog of death if you want to be put off buying an M6. It's never a good sign when there's a of death related to your car. I've mentioned the M6 in a previous video and discussed its appearance and all that great stuff, and overall it is a very cool car in my opinion, but I think any car that would make you as stressed about driving it as this one might is probably not a good car to live with. Taking the top spot is the E60 BMW M5, a car with a massive cult following. It hosts the same engine as the M6 I mentioned and has almost exactly the same specs in terms of performance, and came as the E60 Saloon and the E61 Estate. And as I've spoken about the M5 a fair bit in previous videos, let's take a deeper look at that engine. It made the M5 the first ever production petrol V10 saloon, and was created as a result of BMW's involvement in F1 as part of the Sauber team. That's likely why it was made to rev so high and sound as good as it does. The engine has won numerous awards of the International Engine of the Year, as you can see on screen, which certainly helps when it comes to building that massive cult following I mentioned. I think what also helped grow that following with the M5 specifically over the M6 is the fact that BMW produced more than double the amount of M5s, and the asking price was originally lower than the M6, so it gave a wider group of people the opportunity to own this ridiculous V10 engine. In addition to this, M5s have a slightly more complete history since the first generation was produced in 1984, and the simple fact that an M5 will likely work far better as a family car than an M6 would. This iconic status of the M5 means that it hasn't depreciated anywhere near as much as the M6 and remains the most expensive car on this list, so £10,000 will only just get you one with quite high mileage. Given those reliability points I mentioned with the M6, which the M5 obviously shares, I'll leave it up to you to decide whether it's worth it. All in all, for me though, I do very highly rate the M5. As a car fanatic, I feel like you have to have a level of respect for this car. Even though it might feel like you're bleeding money when owning one, it will certainly feel like it's worth it when you get to hear this. So in this video I run you through the top 5 cheapest V10s that you can buy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you guys have to say about the cars, and also don't forget the topic of the week as well. I realise that I used some of these cars in recent videos, so I'm sorry on that point, but I did try to bring in some new information, so hopefully you guys still learned something. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, also follow me on Instagram and also Twitter, which I'm going to try to actually tweet. I'm going to regret saying that because I'm going to struggle to do that, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. I really appreciate all the support you guys have given to the channel, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Listen.